there's this time, which most everyone calls the millennium, when Jesus comes back. Or Jesus is just in heaven for this millennium. So there's a resurrection before the millennium, and there's a resurrection after the millennium. And one of them's the great white throne judgment is at the end of the millennium. I can find those for you. I think they're in Revelation 22. It's okay. It's Revelation 20, verse 4. I saw thrones, and upon them sat the judgment given to them to judge. And I saw souls of those who had been beheaded because of the testimony of Jesus. They had not worshipped the beast. They came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were completed. This is the first resurrection. Then later it says that's Revelation 24, and then Satan's free. Satan is locked away for 1,000 years, and then he comes back. And then Revelation 20, verse 12 says, I saw the dead, great and small. This is later, standing before the throne, and the books were opened, and they were judged according to their deeds. So everyone calls that the millennium. But every place where 1,000 years is mentioned, the word is plural. So it's thousands of years. So that there's a differentiation. It's not 1,000 years. If it is 1,000 years, then that's kind of wrong anyways. Like, we know that Jerusalem fell 2,000 years ago, not simply 1,000 years ago. And that's where Jonathan Welton says that Christ really will come back after these thousands of years, whichever they are. Like, who knows? It's been 2,000 now, so that's 1,000 years.
So at minimum.
Right, at minimum 2,000 years, but it could be more than that. And then there is the new heaven and new earth. And then Welton teaches that Matthew 25 talks about that time frame when God comes on his throne and he brings the nations before him and gathers them as one gathers his goats and his sheep and separates them out into, and then says, well, come into your Father, and he casts the others away. That is one problem that people who believe that this judgment is still future have, because if the kingdom is in the future and they're being cast into hell, who's left to populate the earth for the millennium? So Welton is saying that this is the end of time because nobody's left. Now they're enjoying the heavenly kingdom with Christ. And the others are in hell. So there's none left to populate that middle time of earth. And he also uses future language, in Matthew, he uses future language the king was gone for a long time. And, oh gosh, I wish I could. Okay. I think it's the parable of the talents in Matthew 25. For it's about a man called on a journey. He called his slaves and entrusted to them. And then it says, after a long time, his master came back. It's verse 19. Now, after a long time, the master of those slaves came back and settled accounts. So Jesus is saying, the judgment is here, it's coming, it's in this generation. John uses those same things. It's soon, it's coming, it's now, this is the end times. But then there's this other parable that he uses that it's after a long time that the master comes back. So the Jonathan's teaching is this is at the end of time, like when Jesus really does come and return. The difference that Jonathan Welton teaches is that the destruction and the things prophesied of the temple falling and stuff like that, that happened in the past. We're not looking for another temple to be rebuilt just so it could be torn down again. So that's the difference, that we're living in this thousands year time frame of that's done, that destruction is over, and now the kingdom is advancing evermore, and the kingdom continues to advance until the king returns. It's not the kingdom continues to advance until it almost gets destroyed, and then the king returns. At this point, that the old covenant is done, the destruction is over. We're in a new covenant that Christ is, and it's an everlasting covenant, at which time Christ returns and sits as king. So, yay, it's better for us than it was for the people in the first century.
Finally.
But, so that's kind of the end of that. We could go through Matthew and Revelation like step by step. It's a lot of work, and I don't know that I'm ready to put that much work into it. But
very deep. I'm only in kindergarten, so it's a lot of work.
Let me
do.
let me just draw the attention of the listener, if that's Jen and only Jen, to the book that the way this author divides up the book of Revelation. It's in our book on page, let me see if I can find it. Okay.
Christians seem to be the ones most passionate about the reinstitution of Israel and the Palestine-Israel conflict, because they think that if there's no Israel and there'll be no temple, then Jesus will never come back.
I'm talking about page 429 of our book.
What's the page?
429.
421. That's nice.
At 429 in our book, he divides up the book of Revelation into the different sections of the book of Revelation. Actually, he does a really good job in here doing an overview, much better than I've done probably today. Charlie just asked, is that why Christians seem to be the most passionate about having the temple rebuilt and those things? Like, I know the Jews are very passionate about it and want it. They want it because
No, Christians more on the...
Well, Jews want it because they can't worship God as the way that they were told to. Christians want it because they believe that that's a sign to them, the fulfillment of God's prophetic words, that there will be, because they believe all this is yet future. They want the temple built so that it's evidence that the prophetic words are coming true. But they want it to be built in reality only so that it can be destroyed. They don't want it built so that they can worship God or do that. It's because because there has to be the end is coming, and the end requires a temple. And so proof that Jesus is coming back is this temple being torn down. It's kind of like really messed up, that they want the temple to be built
Only to be torn
only
down.
to be torn
To
down
show them something
so that they can be right.
Yeah.
And like, if they truly believe that,
Then they're hoping for the death of millions.
right,
Say that
They are-
again, Charlie.
they're hoping for the death of millions to prove the accuracy of their faith.
Or their eschatology.
So they yes, or their eschatology. But a lot of well, there's a church that I used to go to that one of the distinctives of their belief system is the rapture, and they actually believe like all of this is future, and they teach it very much as a part of their belief system. So I don't know what time it is. I mean, we've gone long.
240.
But one thing that Jonathan Walton said that I thought was very, very interesting is look at the fruit of the different end time beliefs. So if you want to call this an end time belief,
How many end-time beliefs are there?
there's many,
How do you,
but
how do you
let's
classify the most common?
the most common is the pre-tribulational rapture, which they believe that the tribulation is this time of the temple being destroyed and people dying and the Antichrist coming and all of that. They call that the tribulation. And the tribulation specifically is the Jews being attacked and killed by the Antichrist. So they believe, so the pre-tribulational rapture is that Jesus comes back for his church. He takes the church, the Christians, off of the planet and takes away his protection from mankind. And that allows this very evil man to come and deceive the Jews and say that he's the Messiah that they've been waiting for. And then he turns on the Jews and like pretty much does, what is that, a genocide. So that's what they expect to happen in the future.